Welcome everyone to today's office hour session. I'm Stuart Newsom, and I'm excited to have you all here for an engaging discussion on how AI and automation are transforming document capture in healthcare. Now, we know that managing large volumes of healthcare documents, whether it's fax orders, handwritten forms, or scanned authorization, has long been a challenge for many providers. Now, while OCR and manual workflows have been used for years, they often fall short in handling complex, unstructured data. Well, today we're going to explore how AI is addressing these challenges by going beyond OCR, improving accuracy and enhancing efficiencies in document processing. Now, joining us today, I'm very excited to have Natalia Arzeno-Gonzalez, or I should say Dr. Natalia Arzeno-Gonzalez. She's our Chief Data Scientist here at Infinx, and she brings a depth of expertise in AI and machine learning. So she's going to help us unpack how AI-driven document capture is redefining healthcare workflows and the role of human oversight when necessary, and what the future holds for automation in this space. Now, as always, and throughout our discussion, I encourage you to submit your questions in the Q&A section down below, and we'll address as many of them as possible toward the end of the session. So there'll be plenty of time to address those. And I also welcome comments. Sometimes people have good comments and insights, so please share those as well. So Natalia, how you doing today?
Hey, Stuart, doing well, thanks. Happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. It's always a pleasure to have you on. We get real excited to hear your insights, especially on this particular subject matter. There's a whole lot more that you could probably cover, but this has been top of mind for a lot of clients that we have and a lot of prospects that we speak with. Document capture has been resonating, and all the manual processes that have been defined that they're still going through, especially with shortages in staff. It's been very difficult. So this is something or a solution that can actually help and assist in that area. So with that, we'll just dive into the conversation. I just want to start off with a couple questions for you. We know, as I mentioned earlier, OCR has been around for a long, long time. When people think of document capture, they typically think of OCR or natural language processing, things of that nature. What sets AI-driven document capture apart from traditional OCR solutions?
Yeah, okay, so I think to answer that, we should start off by going over a document processing workflow. So you have a person at a medical practice that is receiving a document or many documents. But the first thing they're going to do is determine what kind of document it is, probably without even consciously thinking about it. Is this a driver's license? Is it an order form, patient's clinical history, insurance authorization form, and many other types of documents that they may be receiving? Then they'll be looking for some key information in that document in order to know what to do with it. So what's the patient's name, who sent this document, insurance information, any procedures that are being ordered, and so on. So these two steps, the classifying the type of document that's being received and extracting some information from it, are key elements of the document capture solution. And then once you have those, then what do you do next? So you asked, how is an AI-driven solution different from traditional OCR? So traditional OCR is purely extracting text from an image, in this case, a scanned document. So the text, if we get a little bit technical into what OCR does for a developer, the text will be extracted word by word, and it's pieced together line by line. So at the output of these traditional OCR systems, you'll see some line by line text from a page. It'll just be like line 1, line 2, line 3, and so on. And then you'll also have the location and coordinates for the words on the page. So that might have gotten a bit more technical, but the main thing is that document capture solutions using a traditional OCR will have limited use, because now you need to know where in the page am I looking for this information in order to use the OCR output. So they will work for specific templates where you've already identified the coordinates of the key elements on that page. Now you have to maintain a library of templates, the location of the information on the page for each of these templates. And the solutions wouldn't be able to handle any documents that they don't have in this library. And so they're not really scalable. And then there's also OCR solutions that are more advanced, these will typically be more costly OCR solutions, and they'll get you key value pairs as part of the OCR output. So now you just don't get the text and the location. They'll say, this is the key, this is the value. And by that, I mean, this is the field name, and this is the value of the field. So the page says patient name, colon, and then you have a patient name, then it'll return that information. But now we're dependent on these field names being on the page. So a lot of the documents that are received by healthcare practices, they don't have these field names. So now we're again being limited. So maybe some more capabilities, but still we're not able to extract everything that we need. Now the AI-driven document capture will address these limitations because it can learn the variations in structure from the different documents. Yeah, they can use OCR as one of the components to get this text into machine readable form. But we can also train or fine tune machine learning models using the text in the pages or the images themselves. So we can leverage documents that have been worked on by a human and teach the models how the different types of documents can look, what is the content of these documents, and the many ways this key information can be presented. And I think more recently, people are talking a lot about Gen AI. AI-driven solutions can also leverage some of the knowledge in these foundational generative AI models because they're trained on so much data. When we see a completely new template, then we can rely on those also to extract some information from this general knowledge that they have. So that overall, there's a lot of advantages on using AI-driven solutions over OCR.
Wow, and it sounds like, I know from the way you're describing it, it's almost like you're training a person to recognize these different forms and what to do with those forms. And I know that one of the capabilities also is probably recognizing something that is not needed, maybe from like a fax, like a solicitation or coupons or a menu that comes across the fax.
Yep.
And it just knows that you can just disregard that and recognize that and not try and process that and break it down. So I think that's really cool as well, which kind of leads to the term unstructured documents, because although what you talked about with OCRs really rely on structure, knowing where those fields are, understanding where those fields are, but how does the technology handle something like that's handwritten, or maybe an unstructured document that could be a referral? You know, how would it handle that for accuracy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when we talk about the handwriting component of it, I think in the past, maybe that would have been known as, instead of OCR, it was ICR, so intelligent character recognition instead of optical character recognition. Models used to be split into detecting handwriting versus typed text. Now we consider all of that under the umbrella of OCR. But again, that's just one part of it. So if you have a document where you're not familiar with the template, or maybe it's not a table, as many documents are, they may be multi-column documents. You may have the physician information in one side and patient information in another. There's just so many different formats in addition to different types of documents that can be received. The way that we would take care of that with the technology, with the models, is by training or fine-tuning models. So we're teaching the models. You said we're almost like teaching a person how to do it. We're essentially teaching the models. So the models that we can use for these use cases can be one or many of like vision models that will look at the image itself, NLP models that look at the text, and Gen AI models, which actually could be a combination of both, as well as we could even have some more traditional machine learning models for some aspects of it. So these models benefit from being trained with data for this document capture use case, and they can continue improving by incorporating a feedback loop. So as you get more types of documents and you have some sort of feedback into the system, the model can keep getting smarter and be able to handle different types of documents, or maybe just continue improving the accuracy of the model. So this training and fine tuning is pretty important, because a simple call to a generic model won't be enough. these are specialized use cases in document processing that most healthcare practices have. They have people who are trained to do this job. It's not a general obtain these three things. This is the standard document type kind of scenario. But even if we train or fine tune models, we should keep in mind that no model will get to 100% accuracy. I mean, even humans make mistakes. But another thing that we can do with AI is not just create the model with high accuracy, but also have a model to determine the level of confidence in what this AI model is telling us. So we get the determination, what type of document is it? What is the field value that we're interested in extracting? And we also can get a level of confidence. So you can say, we think this is the information with 95% confidence or 90% confidence, and then you can act on that.
Oh, nice. Absolutely. So, and it's almost to me like each of these models have a certain skill, because you mentioned, kind of different processes, NLP, maybe OCR, maybe ICR, and they have this distinct skill if you have it. I don't know if anyone's ever associated AI with having a skill like a person would have a skill, but they all work together. They all work together to get the job done. It's kind of like, constructing something or, playing in an orchestra or whatever, that you're basically, your one aim is to get this job done. The goal is to make sure that this document comes in and the referral is handled appropriately. So neither one of them can probably do it alone, but together they actually complete the job. And then you also mentioned, low confidence. Obviously, I think some of these documents, when they come in, there may be some exceptions, and maybe some potential inaccuracies. So what safeguards are in place to address that low confidence from AI results or any potential inaccuracies?
Yeah, so that's very important because we want to make sure that these documents are processed for the right patient, that the right steps are taken. So I mentioned confidence being a model. We could have a specific model to determine the confidence of the large language model. And this isn't, or of the model that's being trained. If you have a Gen AI model and you ask it, are you confident in your determination? Oftentimes it'll be super confident. So that's not what I mean by confidence. It's an actual model that determines, gives a numerical value to essentially the confidence, so to the likelihood that the answer is correct. They can also have some validation checks, right? So if your model is giving you a number, then that's likely not the patient name. But the key thing is identifying these low confidence AI results or inaccuracies, and that's where the humans would take over. So depending on what the document types are considered by the model, some may be very similar to one another. The model may not be able to tell those apart with high confidence, and maybe the information required to be extracted may be difficult to find because we, for example, have a long list of physicians listed on the page, or perhaps different entries on the page are signed by different physicians. And we are interested in just finding the referring provider. There's many situations where it's more complex to extract information, or maybe we have some edge cases. These complex examples, these could just be handled by humans when we know that this is a low confidence prediction. So the model can make a suggestion, but the human expert would end up making the final determination in those cases.
Right, right. And so it's almost where there's the tech and also the human intervention is working hand in hand. So it's not where this is going to actually fully replace humans, because to your point with those exceptions and with some of those nuances that are very complex, but it does free up, for that human intervention or personnel or staff to really work on those nuances, those complexities. But then the AI, the agent, if you will, could still handle some of those easier workflows. And you kind of answered this already, but the human intervention is certainly still critical in AI workflows. So how does that improve outcomes? Might be an obvious answer.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, you'd think so based on the last question, but there's actually other places where humans are really critical in AI workflows. The best models that we are using now daily. Models that are kind of taking over our lives in certain aspects. Those are created from data that is highly curated or created by humans. So just thinking about it, there's probably at least 3 places that are pretty key for humans to still be involved in these AI workflows. So we talk about taking over when there's low confidence or potentially inaccurate determinations by the AI system. But if we think of the domain expertise that needs to go into a model, as well as how do we continue to make the model better, humans are a key element in that as well. So domain expertise is needed in designing these models, but also what information goes into them. Processing a document for healthcare purposes is different from processing a document for some completely different domain. So we need human domain expertise for training the models, for fine-tuning the models, for creating the data that goes into training and fine-tuning the models. So experts can help differentiate similar document types, like handle these more difficult examples. They can ensure accurate labeling, and they can curate this high quality training data. So high quality training data makes a huge difference in the model performance overall. And not only that, but we need ongoing human feedback, whether this is an audit sort of process or a manual correction. Having humans in the loop and having that feedback go back into the AI system is going to keep that AI model reliable and getting better. So essentially, humans are still critical because AI isn't perfect. And we can have errors, edge cases, and also in healthcare, so many regulatory requirements, right? So we need human review, we need humans in this workflow as well.
Right, right. So yeah, you still need a human to monitor, supervise what's happening. It's almost like this tool that is, and that tool can't just operate on its own. So yeah, to your point, there's continuous training. It's just like with people. We've always, I mean, I've recommended for years that everyone needs continuous training, continuous oversight, continuous monitoring to make sure it's all working appropriately. Same goes for AI. You just can't set it and forget it. It definitely needs that part of the equation. Now, shifting gears just a little bit, I know that some organizations may say, "Oh, well, we're going to build this ourselves. We're going to have an in-house solution that performs this," or maybe they do go out and seek a vendor to build these capabilities for them that may not be maybe in the healthcare space. But specifically for in-house, what challenges do organizations face when building a document capture solution on their own?
Yeah, so essentially all of the complexities in building this solution and building, especially an AI-driven solution, need to be considered. But when you think of someone saying, okay, I want to build this in-house, the very first challenge you're going to be faced with is the quality of the documents. If we're getting faxed or scanned documents, they can be poor quality. So you need to have expertise in how to handle this blurry text, the skewed pages, the noise, the handwriting, right? All of this needs to be handled. And then also you need to be able to handle all the different kinds of formats, all the different document types that would be sent through the system. So the very first question covered how OCR only solutions, which would be the simplest to implement, those are flawed in a sense that they're not scalable. So if you consider that you're going to be receiving documents from different providers, there's no standard template. And so you can't just have like a one size fits all. I have these 5 documents that I've seen before. Now I can make a solution sort of approach. That won't work. So you need to be able, if you're going with an AI system, you need to create this large and well labeled training data set. You need the people with that domain knowledge in order to create that data set. And these data sets can be very time consuming to create. And then after you deploy the system, you would still need to make sure that you're equipped to be constantly monitoring the system and updating as necessary. So you hire a contractor, they did the work, and now you're in 6 months and suddenly something changed, you need to be able to handle that, or even 3 months, or maybe your practice workflow changed. There's so many things that would require just constant monitoring and maintenance of the system. Because new document formats, edge cases, those will always pop up. And then you also need to handle compliance, right? We're in the healthcare field. So you need to be able to have systems in place to make sure that you're compliant, that you have security, you have auditability in your data. And if you're integrating with your EHR, then you also need domain expertise in that if you want to be able to get any gain from automation related to the system. So really, you do need someone with the domain expertise and the technical know-how, not just in the integration part, but in the development and maintenance of all of these models in order to be able to have just a high quality solution.
Right, right. It's almost like, do they have empathy for your struggles? Do they have empathy for what you're trying to solve? And what I mean by that is, is there some healthcare background, that they can feed off of, where they understand why this is important and what the nuances are, because you need to disseminate, like for instance, just the struggle to understand and recognize different forms of documents coming in. Is it an insurance card? Is it a driver's license? Is it a prior auth form? Is it a referral form? The list goes on what needs to be captured, what needs to be recognized, and then decide, to your point, when you say if you're going to add some automation, where is that information going to go? Okay, we've extracted the data, we've captured all this information. Now what do we do with it? Where does it need to go? And there are automations and processes where that's kind of where RPAs could come into play, perhaps, and put that information in the EHR, set those processes in play. So maybe stealing a little thunder from the next question, but I am interested in, how do you see document capture technology evolving in the next 2 or 3 years? And it pretty much maybe the next 2 or 3 months, because it does evolve so fast.
It does. Yeah, I think 2 to 3 years is still quite a ways off given all the technological advancements that we've seen in the last few months or last uh, couple of years. But I expect we'll just kind of keep getting better at it. Models will keep getting better. So we'll continue getting better, like what I call multimodal models, models that can handle the images and the text, different layout structures, everything together, so that you maybe are able to simplify the architecture of what you're building. And ideally, in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll see a lot more focus on healthcare. So I think I've mentioned that these foundation models, they don't necessarily work that well for very specific healthcare use cases because they have so much data that they have considered, but the data that we use for healthcare isn't publicly available. And so
Mm,
you can't be training all of these huge models with a lot of the data. So they're a lot better in more general tasks.
right.
And then we'll see not just the models getting better, but the entire workflow becoming more dependent on AI. I think AI agents are now like popping up in the wording of so many different places. So can you have this end-to-end workflow, not just the document extraction part, where the technology will be able to take the document and then call the patient or contact the patient to schedule an appointment. Can they submit the prior auth request? Just kind of know what to do as a next step
Mm,
without so much, without so many instructions from the human. So it should be able to learn from the human's actions instead of just being told exactly what to do. Now, if we lived in like a dream world, then we could say, hey, maybe in 3 years, healthcare might be paperless and we wouldn't even need this, but that's not happening. So document processing will still be a very big task for providers. I think we'll just see it uh, maybe just being implemented, hopefully more widely, and then just reducing these paperwork delays as the
mm,
technology improves and it's adopted. So adoption is a key component of this. We can see increased efficiency, cost savings, and it would just be beneficial for all.
right, right. Yeah, I can recall dreams of paperless offices decades ago, and
Yep.
it just hasn't come to fruition. And the advent of the EHR and no more paper charts and the charts filing system, and it was such a great endeavor, but here we are. We're still
Mhm.
faxing, we're still having
Yep.
paper. So to your point, it's just not going to go away, for sure. Um, well, Natalia, I'm going to open it up to Q&A now, and just kind of turn it over to some folks. I know that we have one particular question is what types of documents or workflows in your organization could benefit most from AI-driven document capture?
Yeah, so we think of any workflow that a document has to be handled and some information has to be extracted and then an action has to be taken. That's essentially what these systems are meant to help with. So we can think of patient intake and registration, maybe order or referral processing, scheduling, prior authorizations, managing the clinical documentation, making sure everything gets to the right place. These are all areas that will be receiving documents of different types, right? So we have the patient IDs, the insurance cards, the actual order or referral, test results, prior auth forms, like all of these are documents that will be received by a healthcare practice that need to be acted on. So essentially any workflow where the documents are received and then some actions taken based on the information and the type of document could really benefit from an AI-driven document capture.
Nice. Okay. Well, we do have some other questions. Um, let's see. One is, how do you recommend health systems or RCM shops to manage development costs and projects while running day-to-day operations? Training the agents and outliers with required maintenance and management tools. I lean on my large vendors, including the EMR billing system, to manage development and offer these features. That's a long question, but I
That is
think
a
it
long
speaks
question.
to managing the cost of development, the projects while you're still trying to run a practice.
Yeah, that's a great question and probably outside of my realm of expertise. I
Right.
usually depend on my product managers for that kind of thing. But essentially, it's a matter of just being well informed on what you have, what AI initiatives, what tech you're using, what your vendors are doing, asking a lot of questions, and just kind of keeping in mind the things that we've discussed to understand um, what is being done, how is this system working well for me, for my specific use case, and the understanding the maintenance of it as well to make sure that we're not seeing some sort of drift or bias or
Mm.
anything that could end up being detrimental. As far as costs go, um, I'm more of the coder rather than the money person. So,
Right, right, right. There may be a lot of involvement, and it may also be just leaning on a vendor, leaning on someone to kind of help with that. So one more question. It may be a very short one, but is the term document capture more towards capturing data from an existing document, or more towards helping physicians at the point of documentation? I guess when
okay.
building models for documentation, indexing perspective should we use KNN algorithms or random forest? That makes sense.
Okay. I'll gonna answer the first part, and then I'm gonna ask you to repeat the second part.
Okay.
So the document capture, as we've been speaking about it, is more about processing documents that are being received,
Mhm.
and then just understanding what those documents are and what information they contain, rather than creating the documents themselves. Even though that could be part of a workflow as well, but that's not what we have been focusing on for the capture part. And what was the second part?
Yeah, I think the second part was when building the models for documentation, indexing perspective, should we use? And then it's KNN algorithms, or random forest is the name.
Random forest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I am familiar with those. But that's a very difficult question to answer without knowing more about
Yeah,
the specific data being used, as KNN is more of a clustering algorithm. Random forest can be used for classification or
sure.
regression, different uh, aspects. But if you're looking at document indexing, there's just so much that exists. And if we go turn towards more recent developments, then probably like vector similarity and
Mhm.
embeddings is something that could also be considered for that.
And just one last question, and this is the last question for everyone. But given that we need to manage training the model on this private slash proprietary data, how far back do we need to go for from publicly available models? I guess it's like, how much knowledge do you want it to have would determine that question. But just yeah,
Okay,
what's your
so if we're training a model from scratch, right? So you can always use a model that you can host locally, right, and securely, that has been pre-trained in a similar use case. And then these systems often have more than one model in them. I'd say it more depends on how much variety of documents you have and what you're trying to extract from it. So depending on how many documents you get per day or per month. That's going to dictate the timeline, but usually you'll need hundreds or thousands, really. Probably
Hmm.
I would go lean more towards thousands of documents to be able to design a system with high accuracy.
Wow, yeah. So that's it for our questions, and we are out of time. But Natalia, just thank you for sharing, all your knowledge. I know this is just probably the tip of the iceberg that you shared us. There's
Yep.
much more technical goings on behind the curtain. But just want to stress that AI and automation continue to shape the future of healthcare. And it's exciting to see how these advancements are streamlining document capture and improving accuracy. So I just want to thank everyone else for joining us today, and thank you for your time and engagement. If we didn't get to your question, then feel free just to reach out to us and we'll follow up. If you would like to see a demo, you can go to our website and go through, there's a form you can request a demo out there as well. We can get your information and get that lined up for you. Just want to be sure that everyone checks out some upcoming office hours sessions for more discussions on AI and automation. And we also have a podcast called Revenue Cycle Optimize that you can also get a lot of good resources and advice on how AI and automation is improving RCM processes. And Natalia, once again, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on here. I always learn something that I thought I knew, but I didn't know. So I really appreciate you joining us today, and we'll definitely have you on again for sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Stuart.
All right. Thanks, everyone.